Hello and welcome to this deep dive into a topic that's, well, frankly, more controversial than it probably needs to be. Topless sunbathing on New Zealand's beaches. We're talking about the right to bare or not bare one's chest in the glorious sunshine. Is it a matter of personal freedom, public decency? Or, as is so often the case, something a little more complicated? Now you might be thinking, isn't New Zealand like the land of hobbits and bungee jumping? Surely they've got bigger fish to fry than arguing about a bit of exposed skin. And you know what? You're not wrong, but even in Middle-earth, the question of what constitutes appropriate beach attire has sparked some, let's say, spirited debate. So, over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack this issue, diving into the legal framework, the historical context, and of course, the always entertaining court of public opinion. We'll examine whether going topless is a right, a privilege, or just a recipe for some awkward tan lines. Buckle up, because things are about to get surprisingly revealing. Let's start by addressing the legal elephant in the room, or should I say the legal seagull on the beach. What exactly does New Zealand law have to say about baring your breasts by the seaside? Legal expert? Well, the answer, as with many legal matters, is a resounding, it's complicated. You see, New Zealand doesn't have a specific law explicitly prohibiting toplessness in public. Unlike some countries with stricter dress codes, you won't find a clause in New Zealand law that specifically outlaws the act of soaking up some raised sands bikini top. However, before you grab your sunscreen and head for the sand dunes, there's a catch. New Zealand law also includes something called the Summary Offences Act, which, among other things, prohibits offensive behaviour in a public place. Legal expert. Now, the definition of offensive behaviour is about as clear as a glass of seawater. What one person finds empowering and liberating another might consider, well, offensive. This ambiguity leaves the legality of topless sunbathing in a bit of a grey area, subject to interpretation and potentially the whims of whichever police officer happens to be strolling along the beach that day. This lack of clear-cut legislation has led to a situation where technically toplessness isn't explicitly illegal on New Zealand beaches. Still, it could potentially be deemed offensive depending on the circumstances, the location, and perhaps the sensitivity of a nearby seagull. It's a legal tightrope walk that would make even the most experienced circus performer nervous. Legal expert. So while you might not find yourself facing jail time for freeing the nipple on a New Zealand beach, there's still a chance you could encounter some legal pushback. It's a classic case of proceed with caution, or perhaps apply sunscreen liberally and hope for the best. To truly understand the current state of topless sunbathing in New Zealand, we need to take a trip down memory lane. Back to a time when sunscreen was optional and societal norms were, shall we say, a bit more rigid. For much of New Zealand's history, public nudity, including the female kind, was about as welcome as a flock of seagulls at a picnic. Cultural commentator. The prevailing social attitudes, heavily influenced by Victorian-era sensibilities, dictated that certain body parts, particularly those belonging to women, were to remain firmly under wraps. The 1960s, however, brought with them a wave of social change that swept across the globe, and New Zealand was no exception. As hemlines rose and social barriers crumbled, the concept of toplessness began to gain traction, albeit slowly, and not without pushback. The feminist movement played a significant role in challenging traditional notions of modesty and pushing for greater bodily autonomy for women. Toplessness, for some, became a symbol of liberation, a way to reclaim their bodies and challenge the male gaze. Cultural commentator. However, this shift in attitudes wasn't always met with open arms. Conservative voices argued against what they perceived as a decline in moral standards, a slippery slope towards a society devoid of decency. The debate raged on, often spilling onto the pages of newspapers and the airwaves of radio talk shows. Over the years, New Zealand has witnessed a gradual, albeit somewhat uneven, shift towards greater acceptance of toplessness. While it remains a topic that can still spark debate, the days of widespread outrage and pearl clutching seem to be, for the most part, a thing of the past. Today, the question of whether or not to bare one's chest on the beach remains a largely personal one, influenced by a complex interplay of personal beliefs, social norms, and the ever-present possibility of awkward tan lines. So we've covered the legal grey area and the historical context, but what do everyday New Zealanders actually think about topless sunbathing? Well, much like the legal situation, public opinion is a mixed bag.
Imagine, if you will, a beach towel laid out on the sand. On one side, you have those who view toplessness as a non-issue, matter of personal choice, and perhaps a chance to work on an even tan. They argue that women should have the same right as men to enjoy the sun and the sand without the constraints of a bikini top.
On the other side of the towel, you have those who find toplessness, well, a bit off-putting. They might cite reasons ranging from concerns about public decency to the belief that certain body parts are best kept under wraps, regardless of gender.
Public opinion polls over the years have reflected this divide, with surveys showing a significant portion of the population supporting the right to go topless, while a smaller but still vocal minority remain opposed.
Interestingly, age often plays a factor in attitudes towards toplessness, with younger generations generally expressing greater acceptance compared to their older counterparts. Perhaps this suggests that as societal norms continue to evolve, toplessness may become even more commonplace in the future.
However, it's important to note that public opinion isn't always black and white. Many New Zealanders fall somewhere in the middle, acknowledging the right to go topless while still harbouring personal reservations or preferring to keep their own beach attire a bit more, shall we say, traditional.
Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to go topless remains a deeply personal one, influenced by individual beliefs, comfort levels, and perhaps the availability of sunscreen with a high SPF. Now, no exploration of topless sunbathing in New Zealand would be complete without delving into some of the more, shall we say, colourful incidents that have brought this issue to the forefront of public attention.
One such incident involved a group of women who decided to celebrate their newfound freedom by bearing it all on a popular Auckland beach. This act of defiance, while applauded by some, sparked outrage among others, leading to a heated debate about public decency and the limits of personal expression.
In another incident, a local politician found himself in hot water after making some rather inflammatory remarks about topless sunbathers, suggesting that they were asking for trouble. His comments sparked a firestorm of criticism, with many accusing him of victim blaming and perpetuating harmful stereotypes.
Perhaps the most bizarre incident involved a rogue seagull with a penchant for bikini tops. This feathered fiend, apparently mistaking a brightly coloured bikini top for a particularly appealing fish, swooped down and made off with the garment, leaving the unfortunate beachgoer in a rather compromising position.
While these incidents might seem humorous or even trivial, they highlight the underlying tensions and sensitivities surrounding the issue of toplessness in New Zealand. They serve as a reminder that even in a country known for its laid-back attitude, the question of what constitutes appropriate beach attire can still ruffle a few feathers. Well, where does this leave us? As we've seen, the issue of topless sunbathing in New Zealand is a nuanced one, fraught with legal ambiguities, historical baggage, and a healthy dose of public opinion.
On the one hand, New Zealand prides itself on being a progressive and liberal nation, a place where individual freedoms are valued and respected. The lack of a specific law prohibiting toplessness could be seen as a testament to this, a reflection of the belief that adults should have the autonomy to make their own choices about their bodies.
On the other hand, there's a recognition that public spaces require a certain level of decorum, a shared understanding of what constitutes appropriate behaviour. The potential for offence, particularly in a society as diverse as New Zealand, is a factor that cannot be ignored.
Ultimately, the question of whether or not to go topless on a New Zealand beach boils down to a matter of personal choice, informed by a complex interplay of factors. It's about finding a balance between individual freedom and societal expectations, between pushing boundaries and respecting the sensitivities of others.
Perhaps the most important takeaway from all of this is the need for open and respectful dialogue. By engaging in thoughtful conversations about these issues, by listening to different perspectives and challenging our own assumptions, we can create a more inclusive and understanding society, both on and off the beach. So there you have it, a glimpse into the surprisingly complex world of topless sunbathing in New Zealand. We've explored the legal loopholes, the historical shifts, and the ever-changing tides of public opinion. Now, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this issue? Do you think toplessness should be embraced, restricted, or left to the discretion of individual beachgoers? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. And as always, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the fascinating world of bare-chested beach etiquette, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more thought-provoking content. Until next time, stay curious.